Welcome to Radiant Wisdom, a space where stories meet reflection and where ancient teachings blend with our modern lives. I'm grateful to have you here. In a world that often feels fast-pacing and chaotic, this channel is a place to pause, breathe, and rediscover the beauty of the present moment. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you've been part of this journey for a while, I invite you to settle in and listen with an open heart. Our goal here isn't just to share ideas, it's to create a shared space where we can reflect, learn, and grow together. Today's story is one that resonates with a universal truth we all encounter at some point in our lives: the challenge of change. We often find ourselves at crossroads, facing unexpected detours, navigating losses, or watching plans fall apart despite our best efforts. It's in these moments that we feel most vulnerable, as though life is slipping out of our control. We've all felt it, the frustration when things don't go as planned. Maybe you've worked tirelessly for a promotion, only to see someone else get it. Maybe a friendship you cherished has drifted apart despite your attempts to hold it together. Or maybe you've reached a point in your life where you're questioning everything, wondering if you've taken the wrong path or missed out on something meaningful. In these moments, our natural instinct is often to resist. We tighten our grip, trying to control every outcome, as though holding on tighter will somehow change reality. But what if there's another way? What if, instead of resisting change, we could learn to flow with it? What if we could cultivate the kind of resilience that allows us to adapt without losing ourselves? This is where the ancient wisdom of "it's up to your fate" comes in, a concept that invites us to embrace life as it is, without attachment or aversion. But it's so much more than passively accepting what happens. It's an active, mindful practice of aligning with the present moment, understanding that while we may not control everything that happens, we can always choose how we respond. Imagine life as a river. You can't control the current. It will move as it pleases. Sometimes it's calm, other times it's turbulent. You can fight against it, exhausting yourself in the process. Or you can learn to navigate it, using your paddle to steer when needed, but also knowing when to let the current carry you. The wisdom of "it's up to your fate" reminds us that peace doesn't come from having everything under control. It comes from embracing the truth that change is inevitable and trusting that every twist and turn in the river of life has its purpose, even if we can't see it yet. But this isn't easy. Our minds are wired to crave certainty. We cling to what's familiar, even if it no longer serves us. We seek comfort in routines and plans, hoping they'll shield us from the unknown. Yet life, in its infinite wisdom, often presents us with unexpected challenges, reminding us that growth only happens outside of our comfort zones. So, how do we cultivate this sense of calm amidst life's unpredictability? How do we practice surrendering to fate in a way that brings us peace rather than resignation? That's the journey we'll explore today. Along the way, I'll share stories, insights, and reflections that can help us approach life with greater grace and resilience. Before we dive in, I want you to pause for a moment and take a deep breath. Inhale slowly and exhale. As you listen to today's story, try to release any expectations. There's no need to judge your thoughts or feelings. Simply notice them as they arise. Let this be a moment of stillness, a chance to reconnect with yourself. And remember, this isn't just about hearing a story. It's about discovering how the lessons within it can resonate with your own life. So, if something I share today sparks a new perspective or a sense of clarity, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you know someone who's navigating change and could benefit from this message, consider sharing this video with them. By being part of this conversation, you're contributing to a ripple effect of mindfulness, kindness, and growth. And if you'd like to continue this journey with us, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. With that, let's step into today's reflection, the art of embracing change. In this story, you'll discover that peace doesn't come from avoiding change, but from understanding it, embracing it, and even finding beauty in the unexpected. And, most importantly, you'll learn that true strength comes from within, from a heart that is open and a mind that is free. Let's begin. The nature of connections. Everything in life is interconnected, like invisible threads that weave together the story of our existence. Nothing stands alone, not you, not me, not the circumstances we find ourselves in. Every moment we experience is the result of countless conditions and causes coming together. This is the heart of the philosophy behind "It's up to your fate," the understanding that life unfolds as a delicate balance of interwoven events, decisions, and moments beyond our control. Consider a simple raindrop. When it falls to the earth, it nourishes the soil, helps the seeds grow, and feeds the rivers. But that single drop didn't form on its own. It existed because of the heat of the sun, the evaporation of water, and the gathering of clouds. All these elements combine to create something seemingly small but essential. In much the same way, every aspect of your life, from the people you meet to the opportunities you encounter, exists because of a web of connections that stretch further than you can see. But there's a catch. We often forget this truth. We believe we are separate, independent beings moving through life on our own terms. When something good happens, we attribute it to our hard work and effort. When something bad happens, we tend to blame ourselves or others, assuming we failed to do enough. Yet the reality is that our successes and setbacks are never entirely our own. They're shaped by a blend of circumstances, both seen and unseen. Let me give you a more personal example. Think of the last time you experienced a significant shift in your life. Maybe it was a new job, a move to a different city, or even meeting someone who became important to you. Did it happen exactly as you planned? Or did it unfold in ways you didn't expect? Perhaps through an unexpected conversation, a chance encounter, or a detour you didn't see coming. Life is full of surprises, often disguised as random events. But in truth, these moments are threads in the vast tapestry of your journey. The ancient teaching of interconnectedness reminds us that our fate isn't determined by any single effort or decision. It's shaped by countless connections that influence each other in ways we may never fully comprehend. This can be both comforting and unsettling. On one hand, it means you are never truly alone. You are part of something vast and interconnected. On the other hand, it can feel unnerving to realize that so much of life is beyond our control. When we work hard, we expect our hard work to guarantee success. When we pour our hearts into something, we want to believe our effort alone will determine the outcome. But fate doesn't work that way. And yet, this isn't a reason to despair. It's a reason to trust. When we release the illusion that everything rests solely on our shoulders, we can begin to breathe a little easier. We understand that while we may not control every twist and turn, we are part of a larger flow. We can shift our focus from forcing things to happen to allowing things to unfold. This doesn't mean we stop trying or give up on our dreams. It means we take action while staying open to the unexpected. We paddle the boat of our lives, but we also acknowledge that the river's current plays a role in where we end up. Some days the water will be calm, and our efforts will move us forward easily. Other days, the current may push us in a direction we didn't anticipate. In both cases, we're still in motion, still part of the greater flow. In Buddhism, this is often described as the balance between effort and surrender. We plant seeds, but we don't pull at the sprouts, demanding that they grow faster. Instead, we trust the process, understanding that the soil, the sun, and time itself must all play their part. Think about the relationships in your life. You can't force someone to love you no matter how much you give or how well you behave. The connection between two people is a complex dance of timing, shared experiences, and mutual energy. Sometimes, no matter how much you want a relationship to thrive, the conditions simply aren't right. And sometimes, relationships bloom unexpectedly, in ways you never could have planned. This truth extends beyond relationships to every corner of life. Our careers, our dreams, and even our health. Some things will flourish because the right connections align at the right time. Others will fade because their conditions have changed. And in both cases, the message is the same. We are connected to something larger than ourselves, and it's up to fate to weave together the countless threads that shape our reality. But here's the beautiful part. Knowing that fate plays a role doesn't make us powerless. It makes us wise. When we recognize the interconnected nature of life, we become more patient, more compassionate, and more at peace with the ebb and flow of our experiences. We stop blaming ourselves when things fall apart. We stop blaming others when things don't go our way. Instead, we accept that life is a dance of countless conditions coming together and falling apart. So, the next time you find yourself wondering why something didn't turn out the way you hoped, remember this: you did your part, but it's up to fate to bring the rest. And when something wonderful happens seemingly out of nowhere, remember that too. You are part of a web of connections so vast and beautiful that you may never see all the threads. But they're there, woven into every sunrise, every kind word, and every unexpected blessing. In the end, understanding the nature of connections doesn't make life any less mysterious. It simply invites us to embrace the mystery with trust, knowing that everything belongs to the greater flow. And when we do that, we begin to live with a sense of wonder, open to every twist and turn, knowing that each thread has its place in the tapestry of our fate. Control and acceptance. Have you ever noticed how much energy we spend trying to control life? We plan meticulously, set goals, and tell ourselves that with enough hard work and determination, things will turn out exactly as we envision. And yet, how often do things go exactly according to plan? A promotion falls through even though you gave your best. A relationship you thought would last a lifetime slowly unravels. The future you imagined for yourself looks nothing like your current reality. These moments can feel like personal failures, as though the world is slipping out of our grasp, no matter how hard we hold on. This deep desire for control is part of our human nature. We crave predictability because it makes us feel safe. If we can map out the future, we believe we can avoid pain, disappointment, and failure. But here's the truth. Life isn't a machine we can program. It's a living, breathing flow of events, conditions, and connections. The more we cling to the idea that we can control everything, the more we set ourselves up for frustration and anxiety. Life, by its very nature, is unpredictable. Plans will change, people will come and go, and setbacks will appear when we least expect them. And while we can influence some parts of our journey, many things remain beyond our grasp. This is where the wisdom of acceptance comes in, not as defeat, but as liberation. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It means understanding that while you can do your best, the final outcome is often up to fate. Think about the metaphor of a storm. When a storm comes, you can't stop the wind or calm the rain by sheer force of will. If you stand rigid, trying to resist the wind, you'll only exhaust yourself and maybe even be blown over. But if you bend like a tree, allowing the wind to pass through you, you'll stand firm, rooted but flexible. Life's storms work the same way. We may not be able to control every challenge we face, but we can choose how we respond. We can resist, growing more bitter and exhausted, or we can embrace acceptance, finding a strange, but profound peace in surrendering to what is. Of course, this is easier said than done. Our minds have been trained to believe that accepting something means we've failed. Society often tells us that we should always fight for what we want, no matter the cost. But here's the thing, fighting against reality is a losing battle. There's a difference between healthy effort and stubborn resistance. Let's take an example from nature. Imagine trying to plant a garden. You can choose the seeds, tend the soil, and water the plants, but you cannot control the weather. You can't force the sun to shine or stop the rain from falling too heavily. No matter how perfect your preparation is, some seasons will bring an abundant harvest, while others may yield little. In life, we must learn to distinguish between what is within our power, like planting the seeds, and what is up to fate, like the conditions that determine how those seeds grow. But what does acceptance really look like in our daily lives? Sometimes it means giving yourself permission to rest when things don't go as planned, instead of spiraling into guilt or frustration. It means acknowledging that some relationships aren't meant to last forever, even when you've done all you can. It means understanding that you can pour your heart into a project or dream, but the outcome may still surprise you, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Acceptance isn't passive, it's courageous. It takes strength to loosen your grip when you're scared, to release your expectations when things fall apart. But here's the paradox. When you stop trying to control everything, you gain something far more powerful, inner peace. You realize that your worth isn't tied to the outcomes you achieve or the recognition you receive. It comes from how gracefully you navigate life's uncertainties. One of the most profound teachings in this regard comes from the Serenity Prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This wisdom reminds us that there is a time to take action and a time to let go. When we learn to tell the difference, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. We begin to understand that sometimes life's detours are not mistakes, they're redirections. Consider this. Have you ever looked back on a time in your life and thought, I'm so glad things didn't work out the way I planned? Maybe you didn't get the job you desperately wanted, but that led you to a better opportunity later. Maybe you experienced a heartbreak that ultimately helped you discover a deeper, more meaningful relationship with yourself or with someone else. In moments of disappointment, it's easy to feel like life is working against us. But when we step back and view the bigger picture, we often see that life was leading us towards something we didn't even know we needed. This doesn't mean the pain or frustration isn't real. It just means there's often more to the story than we can see in the moment. When we accept that we can't control everything, we become more open to life's lessons. We stop viewing obstacles as punishments and start seeing them as invitations for growth. We let go of the exhausting need to have all the answers, and instead, we learn to trust the unfolding of life. At its core, acceptance is about making peace with uncertainty. It's about living with the understanding that while you have a role to play, the final outcome is often up to fate. And that's okay. Because when we stop trying to control every detail, we make space for something far more beautiful: serendipity, resilience, and an unshakable calm in the face of life's ever-changing tides. In the end, control is an illusion, but acceptance, that's where true freedom begins. Balance of action and stillness. In a world that praises ambition, hustle, and constant movement, the idea of stillness can feel foreign, almost counterproductive. We're taught that if we want something, we must pursue it relentlessly. Hard work, action, and perseverance are often seen as the keys to success. And while there's truth in this, there's another side to the story: the wisdom of stillness. Knowing when to act and when to pause is an essential part of navigating life. This is the balance between action and stillness, the art of discerning when it's time to move forward and when it's time to let things unfold on their own, leaving it up to fate. At first glance, action and stillness seem like opposites. Action is movement, progress, and effort. Stillness is quiet, calm, and waiting. But in reality, they are not in conflict. They're partners in a delicate dance. Just as day needs night and the tides need their ebb and flow, our lives need both action and stillness to thrive. Imagine a bow and arrow. To shoot the arrow forward, you must first draw the bowstring back. That moment of pulling back, the pause, is essential. Without it, there's no momentum. In the same way, moments of stillness in our lives are not signs of weakness or inactivity. They are moments when we gather our strength, reflect, and prepare for the next step. But if we're always rushing forward without pause, we lose our aim. We end up shooting wildly, missing the target entirely. A powerful example of this balance is the story of the two monks in the river, a story you may already know but is worth reflecting on again. Two monks were walking along a path when they encountered a woman struggling to cross a river. The older monk, without hesitation, carried her across on his back, setting her down gently on the other side. Hours later, the younger monk, who had been silent the entire time, finally burst out, "How could you carry that woman? We're monks, we've taken vows." The older monk smiled and replied, "I set her down at the riverbank. Why are you still carrying her?" This story teaches us a profound lesson about the balance of action and stillness. The older monk took immediate action when it was needed. He didn't hesitate to help someone in need, but once the action was done, he let it go. The younger monk, however, became trapped in his own mind, carrying the burden long after the situation had passed. This is where so many of us get stuck. We either act without reflection, rushing from one thing to the next without ever pausing to release what no longer serves us, or we hesitate too long, lost in indecision and fear. But balance lies somewhere in between, knowing when to act and when to be still. But how do we find this balance? How do we know when it's time to push forward and when it's time to let go? First, we must learn to listen to ourselves and to life. Stillness isn't just about doing nothing, it's about paying attention. In the quiet moments, we can hear our own inner voice more clearly. We notice the signs life is giving us. Maybe you've experienced this before. A gut feeling that told you to wait when everything else urged you to push ahead. Or a sudden clarity that arrived after you finally gave yourself permission to rest. This is why mindfulness and reflection are so powerful. When we pause and create space for stillness, we cultivate a deeper awareness of what's happening inside us and around us. We stop reacting out of fear or impulse and begin responding from a place of wisdom. Second, we must trust that not everything requires our constant intervention. When we've done our part, taken the necessary steps, put in the effort, there comes a point where the best course of action is to wait and let life take its course. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn, especially when we live in a culture that celebrates control and quick results. But some things simply need time to unfold. Exercise. Think of a farmer planting seeds. He can water them, tend to the soil, and make sure they're protected from harsh weather, but he cannot force the seeds to sprout. He must wait, trusting that growth will happen in its own time. This doesn't mean we should adopt a passive attitude toward life. It means knowing that true action isn't about constant movement. It's about intentionality. When we act from a place of stillness, our efforts become more focused, more meaningful. On the other hand, if we wait too long, if we become stuck in endless reflection and hesitation, life can pass us by. There are moments when stillness becomes a trap, an excuse for fear or indecision. We tell ourselves we're waiting for the right time, but in reality we're avoiding risk, clinging to the safety of inaction. The balance of action and stillness requires courage. Courage to move when it's time, and courage to wait when it's not. Consider a musician playing a song. The notes themselves are action, the sound, the melody, the rhythm. But between the notes, there are pauses, moments of silence that give the song its shape and meaning. Without those pauses, the music would be chaotic and overwhelming. In the same way, our lives need moments of stillness to give meaning to our actions. As you reflect on your own journey, ask yourself, are you acting out of impulse, without pause? Are you stuck in a pattern of inaction, afraid to make a move? Or are you learning to flow between action and stillness, trusting yourself to know when to act and when to wait? Finding this balance isn't about perfection, it's about practice. Some days you'll move too quickly, other days you'll hesitate too long. But the more you cultivate mindfulness, the more attuned you'll become to life's rhythms. You'll start to sense when to push forward and when to let go. In the end, the dance of action and stillness is about trust. Trusting yourself, trusting life, and trusting that sometimes, after you've done everything you can, the best thing you can do is step back and leave the rest up to fate. The illusion of good and bad. We often view life through a lens of duality. Good and bad, success and failure, happiness and sorrow. It's human nature to categorize our experiences in this way, to celebrate when things go well and despair when they don't. But have you ever stopped to wonder, are things really as simple as good or bad? In reality, life is rarely that black and white. What we perceive as good doesn't always bring lasting happiness, and what we label as bad can sometimes lead to profound growth and unexpected blessings. The problem isn't the events themselves, it's how we label and interpret them. This is what the ancient teachings remind us. Much of our suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from the judgments we attach to those events. Let me share a story to illustrate this point, a story you may have heard in different forms. There was once a humble farmer who lived with his son and a single horse. One day, the horse broke free and ran away. The neighbors came to offer their condolences. "What terrible luck," they said. The farmer simply replied, "Maybe, we'll see." A few days later, the horse returned, bringing with it a group of wild horses. The neighbors were astonished. "How fortunate you are," they exclaimed. Again, the farmer shrugged and said, "Maybe, we'll see." Not long after, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses and was thrown off, breaking his leg. The neighbors rushed over once more. "How unlucky," they cried. The farmer, calm as ever, said, "Maybe, we'll see." A week later, the local army came through the village, drafting all able-bodied young men to fight in a war. The farmer's son was spared because of his injury. The neighbors marveled at his good fortune. But the farmer, with his quiet wisdom, simply said, "Maybe, we'll see." The story of the farmer reminds us that events in life are not inherently good or bad. They simply are. What seems like a misfortune today may lead to a blessing tomorrow, and what feels like a victory now may later bring unforeseen challenges. Think about your own life. Have you ever faced a setback that at the time felt like the end of the world? Yet, looking back, you can see how that experience shaped you in meaningful ways. Maybe losing a job forced you to pursue a different path, one that aligned more closely with your passions. Maybe a painful breakup taught you self-worth and led you to healthier relationships. These moments may have felt like bad luck in the moment, but they planted the seeds for something greater. But why do we label things as good or bad in the first place? It comes down to our expectations. We have an idea of how life should be, what success looks like, how relationships should unfold, what happiness is supposed to feel like. When life deviates from that script, we immediately label it as a failure or tragedy. But life doesn't follow our neatly written plans. It moves in ways that are often mysterious and unpredictable. The truth is, there are countless variables at play, far beyond what we can see or understand. A bad day may be preparing you for a breakthrough. A good opportunity may be teaching you patience or humility in ways you didn't expect. By holding on to rigid definitions of good and bad, we miss out on the full complexity and beauty of life's unfolding. The illusion of good and bad also influences how we approach adversity. When something bad happens, our instinct is often to resist it, to wish it away. We brace ourselves, thinking, "This shouldn't be happening to me." But resistance only amplifies our suffering. The more we push against reality, the more exhausted we become. Instead, what if we could approach hardship with curiosity? What if, instead of labeling it as bad, we asked, "What can this teach me? How might this serve me in ways I can't yet see?" This doesn't mean we deny our feelings or pretend that pain doesn't hurt. It's okay to feel disappointment, grief, or frustration. But by releasing the need to label every experience as good or bad, we create space for something else: acceptance, resilience, and ultimately growth. There's also an important truth to remember. What's good or bad is often relative. What seems like a blessing to one person may feel like a curse to another. A promotion may bring financial stability, but also increased stress. A rejection may sting, but also open doors to new opportunities. Life is nuanced, and the same event can hold both joy and sorrow. Buddhist teachings remind us that clinging to good experiences and avoiding bad ones is what creates suffering. When we cling to something good, we fear losing it. When we avoid something bad, we resist the lessons it can offer. True peace comes when we embrace life as it is, not as we wish it to be. When we stop chasing only the pleasant moments and fearing the painful ones. Consider the changing seasons. Spring blossoms give way to summer's heat, which in turn yields to autumn's quiet beauty and winter's stillness. None of these seasons is inherently better or worse. They each play a necessary role in the cycle of life. If we judged winter solely by its cold and darkness, we'd miss the quiet rest it offers. If we clung only to spring, we'd miss the richness of life's ebb and flow. In the same way, our lives are made up of seasons, times of joy, growth, loss, and renewal. By releasing our rigid ideas of good and bad, we allow ourselves to move through these seasons with greater ease. We stop resisting life's natural rhythms and learn to trust the unfolding of our own journey. The next time you're tempted to label an experience as good or bad, pause for a moment. Take a deep breath and remind yourself, maybe, we'll see. Life is a much bigger story than any one moment, success, or setback. When you make peace with the uncertainty of good and bad, you open yourself to the full richness of what life has to offer, the beauty in both the blessings and the lessons. The power of non-attachment. As human beings, we are wired to form attachments to people, to experiences, to our possessions, and even to our beliefs and expectations. We hold tightly to what we love and what makes us feel safe, and we resist anything that threatens to take those things away. But what if our need to cling is the very thing that causes our suffering? What if true peace comes not from holding on, but from letting go? In Buddhist philosophy, the concept of non-attachment doesn't mean detachment in the sense of emotional coldness or indifference. It doesn't mean withdrawing from life or becoming apathetic. Rather, non-attachment is about cultivating a healthy relationship with everything in our lives, being able to experience joy and connection without the fear of losing them. It's about living fully, loving deeply, and pursuing our dreams while remaining free from the chains of expectation and control. To understand non-attachment, it helps to think about a butterfly resting in the palm of your hand. If you try to grab it, you'll crush its delicate wings. But if you leave your hand open, the butterfly may stay for a while, and when it flies away, you'll have had the chance to appreciate its beauty without causing it harm. This is the essence of non-attachment, learning to hold things lightly. But what does this look like in real life? How do we practice non-attachment when the stakes feel high, when we're talking about the people we love, our careers, or our dreams for the future? Non-attachment starts with a fundamental understanding. Everything is temporary. No matter how much we wish otherwise, everything in life changes. Relationships evolve, careers take unexpected turns, health fluctuates, and seasons of life come and go. When we resist this truth, when we cling to the belief that things should stay the same, we set ourselves up for disappointment and heartache. But when we accept impermanence, we can begin to find freedom. This doesn't mean we stop caring. On the contrary, it means we learn to care in a way that honors the present moment without trying to freeze it in time. We savor the beauty of what we have now, knowing it may change or fade, and we embrace the truth that life's value isn't found in permanence, it's found in presence. One of the most profound lessons in non-attachment comes from the idea that we don't truly own anything. Not even our experiences. The people we love, the successes we achieve, and the milestones we reach. These are gifts, not possessions. When we treat them as gifts, we appreciate them more fully because we're not consumed by the fear of losing them. Take relationships, for example. When we're attached to someone in an unhealthy way, we may try to control them, expecting them to behave a certain way or fearing their absence. This kind of attachment creates anxiety and tension. But when we practice non-attachment, we approach relationships with respect and gratitude, not ownership. We love freely, understanding that the people in our lives are not ours to keep, but fellow travelers on this journey. This applies not just to people, but to our goals and dreams as well. Non-attachment doesn't mean we stop striving. It means we pursue our goals with passion and dedication, but without becoming obsessed with a specific outcome. When we attach our happiness to a single result, whether it's landing a dream job, achieving a financial milestone, or receiving recognition, we set ourselves up for disappointment if things don't go as planned. But when we approach our dreams with a sense of openness and flexibility, we remain resilient in the face of setbacks and surprises. Consider the story of a sculptor working on a block of marble. He envisions a magnificent statue and chisels away with great care and effort. But halfway through, the stone cracks in a way he didn't expect. If he's attached to his original vision, he may feel devastated, believing all his work was for nothing. But if he practices non-attachment, he can step back, reassess, and perhaps create something even more beautiful than he imagined. A new masterpiece, shaped not only by his hands, but by the imperfections of the stone itself. Non-attachment also invites us to let go of the stories we tell ourselves about how life should be. How often do we cling to expectations about who we're supposed to be, what success looks like, or how our lives should unfold? These mental attachments can be some of the hardest to release because they're tied to our sense of identity. But freedom comes when we realize that we are not defined by our achievements, failures, or the roles we play. By loosening our grip on these stories, we make room for something far more powerful: possibility. We allow ourselves to grow and evolve beyond the limits we once placed on ourselves. We become open to the unknown and the unexpected, which can often lead us to places we never dreamed of. Of course, this practice isn't easy. Letting go can feel terrifying, like stepping into an unfamiliar landscape without a map. But with time and mindfulness, non-attachment becomes a source of strength, not weakness. It allows us to face life's inevitable losses with grace and resilience. Instead of closing ourselves off in fear, we remain open and receptive, trusting that life will continue to unfold as it should. In the words of the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, letting go gives us freedom, and freedom is the only condition for happiness. If, in our heart we still cling to anything, anger, anxiety, or possessions, we cannot be free. So, what does it mean to live with non-attachment? It means appreciating the present without trying to hold it hostage. It means loving fully without demanding permanence. It means striving for your dreams without tying your worth to the outcome. When we live this way, we discover that true happiness isn't found in having more or holding tighter. It's found in being free enough to embrace life as it comes and let it go as it must. And when we do this, we become like the open hand with a butterfly, not grasping, but receiving everything with grace. Ultimately, non-attachment is not about distancing ourselves from life. It's about living more fully, more freely, and more joyfully. Because when we stop clinging, we realize that we've had what we needed all along, the ability to experience life with an open heart. Living with intention and flexibility. At some point, we've all heard the phrase, stick to the plan. And while discipline and focus are valuable, life often has a way of surprising us. Plans fall apart, opportunities shift, and the path we thought we'd take becomes obscured. In these moments, it's tempting to double down, to rigidly push forward, convinced that sheer determination will bend the world to our will. But what if the real key to fulfillment is learning to live with both intention and flexibility? Living with intention means having a clear sense of purpose, a guiding star that informs your decisions and actions. But intention doesn't mean control. It's not about scripting every detail of your life. Instead, it's about moving forward with clarity while staying open to life's changes. Flexibility, on the other hand, is the art of adapting when life throws you a curveball. It's the ability to pivot without losing your sense of direction. Think of it this way. If life is like sailing across the ocean, your intention is your compass. It tells you where you want to go, but the winds and tides are your reality. Flexibility is your willingness to adjust the sails when the winds change, rather than fighting against the current. A skilled sailor knows when to stay the course and when to let the wind carry them somewhere unexpected. But how do we balance these two forces? How do we live with intention while remaining flexible? Let's take a closer look. 1. Clarity of purpose. Living with intention begins with asking yourself an important question. What truly matters to me? Too often we get caught up in chasing things that don't align with our core values. Prestige, approval, material success, without ever stopping to consider whether those things actually bring us joy or meaning. To live with intention, you must define your purpose, not in a rigid one-size-fits-all way, but in a way that reflects your unique values and dreams. This purpose becomes your internal compass, helping you make decisions that align with who you are and where you want to go. For example, let's say your purpose is to live a life filled with creativity and connection. This intention can guide your daily choices, whether it's choosing meaningful work, prioritizing relationships, or embracing new experiences that spark inspiration. But here's the key. While your purpose gives you direction, it doesn't dictate the exact path you'll take. That's where flexibility comes in. 2. Releasing attachment to specific outcomes. One of the biggest traps we fall into is becoming overly attached to a specific outcome. We set goals, and instead of focusing on the journey, we become fixated on a narrow version of success. But life is rarely linear. Often, the path to achieving our intentions looks very different than we expected. Let's say you dream of starting your own business. You work hard, create a business plan, and pour your energy into making it happen. But then an unforeseen challenge arises. Maybe you lose funding or the market changes. At that moment, you have two choices: resist and cling to the original plan, or adapt and look for new opportunities. Maybe your original business idea needs to evolve, or perhaps the setback opens a door to a different, even more fulfilling venture. Flexibility doesn't mean giving up. It means being willing to pivot without abandoning your purpose. It means trusting that there are multiple ways to live a meaningful life. 3. Trusting the unfolding of life. Living with flexibility requires trust. Trust in yourself, trust in the process, and ultimately trust in life itself. This can be difficult, especially when things don't go as planned. But sometimes, what seems like a setback is actually a redirection. Consider the story of Steve Jobs. In 1985, he was famously fired from the company he co-founded, Apple. At the time, it must have seemed like an immense failure, but instead of giving up, he adapted. He went on to start another company, Next, which played a pivotal role in the creation of Apple's future technology. He also acquired Pixar, which became one of the most successful animation studios in history. Jobs later returned to Apple stronger and more creative than ever. His story illustrates an important truth. Sometimes, the detours lead us to the very places we were meant to be. But we only find those places if we're willing to release our attachment to the original plan and embrace the unfolding of life. Or, mindful action. Flexibility doesn't mean passively drifting through life without direction. It means practicing mindful action. This means taking deliberate steps toward your goals while remaining aware of the present moment. When you live with mindful intention, you can notice when things aren't working and make adjustments without feeling like you've failed. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. Your intention is to reach the summit, but along the way, the weather changes unexpectedly. If you're rigid, you might push forward in dangerous conditions, ignoring the signs around you. But if you're flexible, you'll pause, assess, and maybe take a different trail, or wait until the weather clears. You're still pursuing your goal, but you're doing so with wisdom rather than blind determination. 5. Resilience through change. The balance of intention and flexibility also cultivates resilience. When you're flexible, setbacks don't feel like the end of the world. Instead, they become opportunities to grow and learn. You develop the inner strength to navigate uncertainty with grace. Think about bamboo in the wind. Unlike a rigid tree that might break under pressure, bamboo bends and sways but remains rooted. Its strength comes from its flexibility. In the same way, when you approach life with both intention and flexibility, you can weather life's storms without losing your sense of purpose. 6. Letting go of perfectionism. Living with flexibility also means letting go of the need to be perfect. Perfectionism can trap us in rigid expectations, telling us that there's only one right way to succeed, one right way to be happy. But when we release this mindset, we allow ourselves to embrace imperfection as part of the journey. Life rarely unfolds according to a perfect script, and that's okay. The imperfections, the detours, and the surprises are often what make the journey meaningful. The balance in practice. So how do you live with both intention and flexibility? It starts with small daily practices. Set clear goals, but hold them lightly. Be open to feedback and change. Pause when things feel off course and ask yourself if it's time to adjust. Trust that even when things don't go as planned, they may still be leading you towards something meaningful. Ultimately, living with intention and flexibility is about learning to dance with life rather than trying to control it. When you live this way, you stop seeing unexpected changes as failures. Instead, you begin to view them as part of the unfolding story, a story that may surprise you with its beauty. Remember, your purpose is your compass, but the winds of life may take you somewhere even more extraordinary than you imagined. And when you learn to trust both your intention and the journey, you'll find a deeper sense of peace, knowing that no matter where life takes you, you'll always be moving in the right direction. The lesson. As we come to the end of this journey, let's take a moment to reflect on the lessons we've uncovered. Life is an ever-changing landscape filled with moments of joy, challenge, success, and loss. we've explored what it means to navigate this uncertain path with grace, embracing the wisdom of living with intention, flexibility, and non-attachment. But perhaps the greatest truth of all is this: peace is not found in controlling life's outcomes. It is found in trusting the process and embracing each moment as it is. So, what have we learned? At the heart of it all is the idea that life unfolds according to forces much larger than our individual will. Call it fate, destiny, or the interconnected web of circumstances. There are things we cannot control, no matter how much effort we put in. But this isn't a reason to despair. In fact, it's an invitation to freedom. When we stop trying to force life to conform to our plans and instead learn to flow with its rhythms, we begin to live with a deeper sense of ease. Think back to the story of the farmer who responded to life's ups and downs with the simple words, "Maybe, we'll see." This wasn't indifference, it was wisdom. The farmer understood that what seems like a blessing today may carry unforeseen challenges tomorrow, and what feels like a misfortune may one day reveal itself as a blessing in disguise. This perspective frees us from the exhausting need to label every experience as good or bad. Instead, we can trust that life is unfolding exactly as it should, even if we don't yet understand why. 1. Embrace uncertainty. One of life's hardest lessons is accepting uncertainty. As much as we want to predict and control the future, the truth is that life's greatest gifts often come in unexpected ways. Consider the moments in your life that brought you the most joy or growth. Were they part of a carefully laid out plan, or did they arrive unannounced, shaped by circumstances you couldn't have foreseen? When we learn to accept that uncertainty is not the enemy, but a natural part of life, we can approach each day with more curiosity and less fear. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" we can ask, "What can I learn from this?" We begin to trust that even when things fall apart, something new may be taking shape beneath the surface. 2. Take action, but let go of the outcome. Living with intention doesn't mean we stop dreaming or taking action. It means we pursue our goals with dedication, knowing that we can't control everything. We take meaningful steps toward our dreams, but we let go of the belief that our happiness depends solely on achieving a specific result. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. Your goal is to reach the summit, and you've prepared carefully. But along the way, a storm rolls in. At that moment, you have a choice. Stubbornly push forward, risking your safety, or adjust your plans. Seeking shelter, waiting for clearer skies, or even taking a different path altogether. The lesson here isn't about giving up. It's about knowing when to pivot and trust that changing direction doesn't mean failure. In life, just as in nature, the conditions won't always align perfectly with your plans. But when you're willing to adapt, you discover new possibilities, ones that may lead you somewhere even more meaningful than the original goal. 3. Love freely without clinging. Non-attachment doesn't mean distancing yourself from life's joys. On the contrary, it means loving and living fully without the need to possess or control. It means appreciating the people in your life without fearing their departure, and cherishing beautiful moments without trying to make them last forever. Consider a sunset. You can't stop the sun from dipping below the horizon, no matter how much you wish you could prolong its beauty. But by accepting its impermanence, you savor it more deeply. You appreciate it in its fullness, knowing that its fleeting nature is part of what makes it special. The same is true for relationships, dreams, and experiences. When we hold on too tightly, we often miss the beauty of the present. But when we love freely, without clinging, we experience a kind of freedom that allows us to live with open hearts, even in the face of loss. 4. Strength in stillness. Another key lesson is learning to embrace moments of stillness. In a world that glorifies constant productivity, stillness can feel like a weakness. But true wisdom lies in knowing when to pause and reflect. Stillness isn't the absence of action. it's the presence of awareness. When we slow down, we create space for clarity and renewal. We learn to listen, not only to the world around us, but also to our own inner voice. Stillness teaches us that we don't always have to force progress. Sometimes the greatest growth happens when we give ourselves permission to simply be. 5. Trust the process. Perhaps the most profound lesson of all is the importance of trust. Trusting yourself, trusting others, and most importantly, trusting life. Trust doesn't mean you'll never face disappointment or pain. It means believing that you'll find the strength to navigate whatever comes your way. It means understanding that life's challenges are not obstacles to your happiness, but stepping stones to deeper wisdom and resilience. In the end, the question isn't whether life will change, it always will. The question is how we respond to that change. Do we resist, clinging to what was, or do we embrace it, trusting that each ending holds the seed of a new beginning? Final reflection. So, as you step forward from this moment, remember, you have the power to live with intention, to pursue your dreams and love fully. But you also have the wisdom to remain flexible, to adapt, let go, and trust in the flow of life. Take a deep breath and remind yourself that you don't have to control everything to find peace. Your strength doesn't come from certainty. It comes from your ability to move gracefully through the unknown. Life is a story that unfolds one chapter at a time, and while you may not control every plot twist, you can choose to live each moment with courage, compassion, and an open heart. Thank you for spending this time with Radiant Wisdom. If this message has resonated with you, I invite you to share your reflections in the comments and pass this message along to someone who may need it. Until next time, may you live with grace, embrace life's changes, and find peace in every step of the journey.